You're listening to the Backwards Hat CMO Podcast with Dave Daba, presented by Stealth.ltd.
Welcome to the Backwards Hat CMO Podcast. As always, I am Dave Daba, coming to you live and, of course, on tape from the heart of the Silicon Valley. Now, I have to say, I am super excited today because we are going to have a conversation with Lisa Helfer. Lisa is what I like to call a global comms super executive. And she probably wouldn't like the super, she doesn't like to brag, but over the years, she has been a comms expert who has worked with Intel, Microsoft, Amazon, Nokia. Look, and if you've seen all of the new television ads of BMO, she's also worked with BMO Bank as well. Lisa, I'm so excited to have you on today's show. We are going to have a conversation about what the impact is of AI on PR and marketing strategies. Welcome to the Backwards Hat CMO. And I failed again to get a guest to actually wear a hat backwards.
And go grab one from the closet. But thanks for having me on, Dave. I'm super excited for this conversation. Great format you have going here, so happy to dive in.
Yeah, it is. The impact of AI across the world really over the last 24 months has been very very interesting. I did notice that, and I put out a post over the weekend, and then a short podcast earlier in this week as well about Taylor Swift actually winning the Time Magazine Person of the Year award. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I listened to your episode as well. It was great, really great analysis.
And it's just one of the things that actually surprised me about her winning that award is that it went to her and not some revolutionary AI product. So I thought today's conversation around PR and AI was going to be a good one to have. So we've got 3 topics on the table. I seriously doubt, because as all of you know, I ramble a little bit too much. So I seriously doubt that we'll get all 3 topics covered, but we'll give it a shot. AI's Got Talent. Now, this was Lisa's topic ideas. So instead of America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent, we're going to do an entire segment on AI's Got Talent, possibly get into the redefining the actual impact PR is actually going to have on overall marketing strategies. And if we have time, we'll get into the importance of personal branding in a AI-driven world. Lisa, let's kick this off, though, and discuss the first big topic, how you see AI impacting the world of PR strategies, which I think is just going to lead us into your brilliant idea to talk about AI's Got Talent.
Sure. So I think this is where we are, this era, better, faster, stronger. And as communications professionals, just like we're seeing in marketing and sales, where there's a lot of conversation about AI in marketing and lead gen, we're seeing that AI is impacting our daily tactical and also strategic activities. For PR, this is pitch development, content outlines and blog writing, bios, list building, influencer research, the procurement of data points and insights to inform our work, category development, just basic research, looking at market shifts, and also things like new business plan outlines and development, campaign outlines. And then we're also using it for measurement and looking at it as a learning tool for KPIs, looking at quarter over quarter, year over year, how we're progressing and how we can use it as an analytical tool. So we have the benefit of this learning and predictive atmosphere that AI provides. But I do see that in deep tech and B2B activities, even with specific prompts, I need to edit back language for content. For example, it tends to be very flowery, everything's very exciting and adjective heavy. So we have this ability to utilize the opportunity of AI, and in a way it's this unlimited interactive brainstorming, but I still put my human filter on it. You know, I look at these daily activities, we'll edit back the language, we'll shuffle things around. So, you know, definitely needs the human stamp on it.
One of the phrases I came across, I actually heard this at a conference, which was assisted inspiration.
Yes.
And that was another speaker's way of sort of talking about just AI as a whole. And I just thought that was really interesting, especially from also sort of a comms perspective, because I think there's like the tactical ways you can use AI, and then there's also the inspirational ways you can use AI to help you actually come up with cool ideas, even like AI's Got Talent.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, coming up with, it's great for headlines and subject lines, and you can prompt, you know, make this provocative, make this eye-catching. You can talk about specific journalists, for example, and say, I want to frame this for Wired or for Fast Company or for New York Times, and pull in the journalist and find some interesting insights there. So it can get very, very specific and useful.
Yeah. All right. So tell me your thoughts on this whole walls down, walls up world that apparently we're living in.
So when I've worked with clients in the past, a lot of the barrier is the silo, right? So PR or comms is working in one silo, we've got marketing and sales, and they're not always aligned from the beginning of the campaign outset to understand, like, these are our targets. This is what we want to accomplish from this event we're going to. This is how our sales teams are talking about what we're selling, what they're talking about in the nurture process. And I think because of the rapid acceleration we're seeing with the AI in terms of not only technology, but the conversation shifting, and it's even more essential for organizations and professionals to look at, you know, keeping the walls down between the departments, planning together, and making sure that you're ready to pivot and strategize when the new technology comes forward, when new data becomes available. That's also something where you want to include your C-suite to have buy-in as you're moving through this. And from a comms perspective, you want to be closely aligning with lead gen, ABM, ABX, as I mentioned, nurture campaign content, because this helps to inform what we're doing when we go out and talk about your brand or your company, or you know, if something comes back, if you have an executive go up for an interview, you want them to be informed on all of these aspects before they're talking to a reporter, or if they're going to speak in an event. You know, you having this sort of 360 lens that's rooted not just in PR strategy, but also in these other factors. And what that helps us do is ensure the collaboration and that we're hitting our targets together. And then, as I mentioned in the first topic, you can use all of that to inform how you're going to move forward in the next quarter or the next year. So it helps to distill all of that when all three, PR, marketing, and sales, are coming to a board report, for example, right? So you can use that to synthesize where you've been and where you're going.
It's just such an interesting topic. As you know, and as you're doing today as well, We both work with a lot of different startups, and they're in different fields and have different strategies. Some of them are, in my case, pre-seed or Series A, and those companies and their strategies when it comes to PR is still so early in their process. And the thing I try to put in place with any organization that I personally work with, you mentioned it as like a Beatles song, it's the come together message,
Right.
which is absolutely right. Because like when it comes to comms and PR, just in general, sometimes it is a bit of it's the last thing you do in terms of your overall marketing mix.
Right.
And when I talk to companies about, product and product releases and product development, I always tell them, write your press release before you even begin producing the product.
Right.
So you actually are able to spend some time actually really thinking about product market fit, what's the opportunity like, and how is this going to be presented to the public when you actually get this thing, whatever that thing is, out the door. So I just, I think the come together component is the glue.
Yeah.
And getting, your sales and your marketing and for God's sakes, your C-suite together, and really sort of understanding what the importance, making up words, but what the importance of how PR can actually affect the overall outcome of your company and your brand, which ties just into using AI to accelerate that process.
Absolutely. And that, it's a great activity to start with a press release. That's exactly what, a great example. And you could drop that into ChatGPT, for example, and just say, this is where we're going. Write me a press release. And you will come into probably 10 iterations of that before you're ready to actually release that. But it gives you that framework to work from. And it saves a lot of time in the development of that messaging. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's just super interesting. So I don't know if you've Lisa, you have kids. I have way too many kids. I don't know if you ever if you remember the great Steve Martin movie Parenthood. But one of the premises of the movie is Steve is on a roller coaster ride and he's constantly going up and down. And for anybody out there that has kids, especially kids that are still at home, I'm sure you've experienced this same roller coaster feeling. What's your take on AI as a whole and sort of the AI roller coaster ride we've been on?
Yeah, I think the roller coaster is a perfect analogy. Even we saw what was happening with OpenAI as a company, but that I think we're in a really big sort of trajectory where it's kind of up and down, and it's time to get your popcorn because we're moving into this fifth paradigm, and we'll see drama in the industry, but also within our own ecosystems. I found Raja Rajamanar wrote a book called Quantum Marketing, where I think his sort of evolving endpoint is that hyper-personalization is where we're going with a lot of this. And we're already seeing this emerge at an unprecedented level. So this is kind of the third bucket here. And understanding this is a very important, another important aspect of how PR can help support a brand and filter back into those other marketing activities. So, for example, we've got a lot of this technology in place. We have interactive digital billboards. We've got augmented reality. Holographic advertising is here. So we want to look at, from a comms perspective, how can AI help to drive these narratives, and how can it help leverage your brand in the public eye? Coca-Cola, for example, just created a billboard where you can prompt your phone while you're driving under the overpass, and your name pops up on the billboard, like, "Hi, Dave." And so it's a really interesting experiment for personalized marketing that happens in this immediate sense as you're driving on the highway. Hopefully you're not using your phone while you're doing that. Maybe it's your passenger, right? But from a consumer standpoint, comms would broadcast, Coca-Cola just did this. You can drive and prompt your phone to show your name. From the B2B PR side, we're going to leverage this as a tech and innovation story to help the company gain a competitive edge and drive the narrative around advancement. And AI is useful here because it can help connect the dots. So these are unprecedented times. We don't have these narratives in place, per se, when the tech comes out. So we can use AI to help us generate and, again, create those frameworks for releasing news like this. And then to further validate, we look at creating narratives for investors, influencers, analysts, and the evolving end game, again, is always to create more business and align with those bigger marketing and sales objectives, while keeping an eye on potential funding opportunities, like you mentioned, startups. That's where they really, really need to focus. So anytime we have this and we're entering into this fifth paradigm, we can further it with narrative development and use it in these sort of kaleidoscopic ways, if you will, right? So we're hitting the goals and the visibility for the brand at different touch points: consumer, B2B, investor. So all of it comes around full circle.
I mean, so much to unpack there, I think.
Yeah.
Well, first thing I want to say is, like, the open AI or the open AI fiasco from a couple weeks was a clear case of a PR nightmare.
Yeah.
That actually, like, that board of directors needed to consult with an outside agency prior to making their decision to understand what the impact would potentially be on the market. Rash decisions are one thing, but rash public decisions are a completely different thing. I mean, in the old days, we used to use the phrase workshop. Let's workshop this idea and concept. But we're not here to rip on OpenAI and that fiasco as much. But the Coca-Cola example is just fascinating to me. Getting to that point, as you mentioned, that Raja talks about with hyper personalization, and getting down to that granular level, I think makes a lot of sense. And when you think of PR, you always think of wide, and how in a world today where we customize our own social media feeds, we customize the information that we are interested in and want to see. That is a world where we're asking as consumers for information that we're only interested in. And if PR, I think, can follow suit to some extent, that would be a great thing. I mean, the use of the technology and being able to use the technology to promote it out makes, of course, a ton of sense. And then I started to think, as you were sort of talking about this topic, and I decided I'm going to test this out next time on my next press release, which is I'm going to customize the press release and the quotes for each of the individual reporters that we're targeting. And I'm going to go and use AI to make my life easy to do it.
And it's helpful for, I used it, also for writing quotes. You can put in someone's bio and their background, and you don't even have to have them in front of you to actually do this. And write me a quote where this is the direction of the press release, and you can get a quote. Again, it really does need to be edited from my perspective, but you can get a general something in place to put in front of an executive so that they can retool it to match their goals.
Yep. So let's talk about one of my least favorite topics, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. I'm begrudgingly a little bit, because I think like we just don't know where this is a gray area conversation in my opinion, but AI ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's head down that rabbit hole for a couple minutes.
So, from an aspirational standpoint, I think this is a personal opinion, but I look at how we're integrating all of this with AI. AI ethics is a huge topic. I see it on LinkedIn all the time. It's in the world's every faction of supporting a company is talking about this, from developers to engineers to marketing people, PR, obviously. And I hope that from the Marcom side, we can use this as another sort of in that kaleidoscope, shift to help create transparency for brands. So like we've done with corporate social responsibility or DE&I and ESG, we can use this as a platform for ethically grounded global conversation that then empowers a company to navigate responsibly and in turn foster brand trust and relevance. So I think you can do this from the B2B side and the consumer side. You're all working with data, and data is a big piece here. Data privacy, governance, security, and then we can use AI to help create the narrative. We can input historical information that, and when I say or historic, I guess historic information, even from the last 6 months. Here was the conversation 6 months ago about AI and ethics, because I've seen it change, and I'm sure you have in the last 3 months. Like the ethical AI conversation we were having over the summer of 2023 is very different from the winter. So we're already seeing a huge shift in the way the narrative is coming out. So we can track those things, input them into AI, and create narrative moving forward that helps to create best practices and helps to inform how each part of your team is using AI and how we're doing so in an ethical manner.
It's I was on the I'm totally dating myself now. I'm wearing the cool hoodie and I got the hat on backwards and I'm about to freaking date myself. But I was on the forefront of the best practices that were built for email marketing back in the day. So I'm going back into, dare I say, the 90s, and sort of carried over into the early 2000s, and the challenges of what was ethical was one thing. Then getting adoption in the industry was another. And then there was the technical adoption once you sort of got to that. And so for me, that was easier to deal with than AI ethics as a whole, just because it's just such a big thing. I like to think ethics are ethics, regardless of AI or not. And I think we're all a little, God, what's that Tom Cruise Minority Report worried, I think would be the term I would use here.
Yeah, I think, like as he's right, where John Anderson's walking through the building and the holograms are jumping out at him and personalizing what he needs for a vacation and all of this. And I think, we're going to get into like opt-in, opt-out 2.0, 3.0 too, because if we're moving towards this place of hyper personalization, you're going to need some really serious boundaries and some structure in place for people to opt out or opt in, given who you are. Because I think that as regulations evolve, as legislation evolves, we're going to see a need for that, because there could be a huge corporate expense on the other side if you don't. And that also impacts brand loyalty. So here's another narrative that we can push through, that is trust, and this company doesn't use your data in the wrong way, or this is so cool, like you could walk into a building and here comes something advertising, but you can immediately say, I don't want to see this, right? And so that would go a long way in that conversation. I mean, this is probably 10 years down the road, but I think if we crystal ball it, the same principles apply. Like you said, ethics is ethics, and the same principles of how we operate and convey brands to consumers or to, in an industry convention, is going to be the same.
All right. This has just been a fascinating conversation, Lisa. I've got one more question for you before we get out of here. Not in any way like a planned question, or anything like that. But like, how do you envision, and this is really for all those comms people that are out there today, how do you envision, AI like impacting their day-to-day lives, let's say 5 years from now? How do you sort of see this sort of all playing out for them?
I think it'll be an acceleration. I don't know exactly what the technology will look like, but I think you could drop in a campaign idea and get your whole, your release. You can already do this now, but it's not learned enough to be able to be as close to a finished product as you might want it to be. So I think we'll see that. I think, we could get reporting done very, very quickly in that capacity, looking at the research again, the history behind certain things, being able to develop categories on the fly. Right now, digital twins a category. OpenAI that's the name of the company, but generative AI. So we have like all these terms that we come up with, and I think that PR as a sort of strategic noise architect in some of this is going to continue driving these conversations and campaigns and all of this, the way that we're pushing these narratives forward is going to be able to shift and pivot and be distributed much more quickly. So, and that agility will have more of an interactive quality to it, which again, I don't know what that's going to look like in 5 years, but I do know that there'll be more of an immediate capability for interaction.
A line of the day. You win line of the day, strategic noise architecture. That is huge. Look, I can envision a world where, and I was thinking about this, we should like set up a real segment on this show where, like, I forget if it was Conan O'Brien that used to do in the year. Used to do, yeah. So in the year 2028, PR will be like, comms people will be doing the following. But what I hope for them is that they're actually able to, from a repository standpoint, be able to plug in a particular topic and actually see who's actually put out both press releases and received coverage over a specific topic. and be able to have that at their fingertips. Look, I haven't gone to a library in 10 years probably, and I haven't used microfiche in 15 to 20 years. For those younger people out there, look it up. So I think though the instant gratification of the data that you're looking for is going to be a huge benefit for comms, people in comms and PR. And then I think and then being able to take that and present hyper focused information back to the influencers that are taking your PR and spreading that message across is going to be one of probably 3 or 4 key strategies for the people in the comms world. But you are the comms expert, not me. So I'll leave that to you. Look, this has been great. Fascinating conversation. Any parting words, Lisa, that you want to leave us with?
I don't think so. It's just a really exciting time. And I think we'll see younger generations who've grown up on YouTube and really clear brand recognition from a very young age. I think that they're going to demand and expect a level of communication that is unprecedented as well. So that plays into, you mentioned kids before. We're going to be marketing and advertising, communicating with a very, very savvy digital generation. And so I think it'll be really great and challenging to figure out how we're going to continue to do this with all this new technology.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, and I look at this and I think, if you're a B2B technology company or you're in the B2B space, and when you put out a social media post, is that comms? I mean, it is a really good question. And what is the strategy behind those social media posts when you put them out? I try to get companies to, at the very least, get themselves on a social media calendar, so that they're actually sort of following suit. But I mean, what do you think about social media? Super quick, is it really PR and comms?
For sure, they emerged very separately. We have our social media director, and it's again another silo. I think more and more, well, at least on the agency side, that was the silo there was becoming less or more windows down in a way. Because the clients are requiring that alignment ahead of time with, as I said before, PR, marketing, lead gen. So anytime you're making a connection point with an exterior audience or an investor or consumer, that's essentially PR, really. So I think social media is definitely another megaphone for that, and creating more alignment there as well with all of the various narratives that we have now at our disposal that connect back to tech and AI. It's a great forum, for not just talking about your company, but having your CTO or your CEO talk about their technology and how they're approaching ethics. If they have a strong position on ethical AI, great, because that is then helping them to connect the dots to others who will be very closely aligned. There are boundaries and barriers to that as well, depending on boards and things. But I think overall, the more personalized your C-suite comes across on their social media, their LinkedIn platforms, the better.
I completely agree. We didn't really have time because I rambled too much about some stuff, but this really goes into, and I'll leave this, I'll leave it here, which is personal branding if you're in the C-suite, if you're a director, if you're a manager, if you're, in your first gig out of college, the personal branding piece. I mean, I wish I had taken those things more seriously earlier in my career. And the piece of advice I would give is, every time you put out a social media post, every time you do anything on social media, there is that personal branding opportunity for you, and think about it that way. And I think you'll be successful. Look, we could do a whole 2-hour podcast on the topic.
Just that. Yeah, for sure. It's your. I agree, and I also think, as Marcom professionals, we're the worst at doing our own sometimes. I'm so busy doing it for other people and companies that I have to step back sometimes and revisit my own profiles and own personal brand, because it is essential.
Yeah. It's amazing to me, like how many, I'm not going to say comms people, but just marketers who are supposed to be creative and outgoing and everything are not, just in general. Anyways, listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today and shedding some light on PR and comms and the wonderful world of AI. I also want to thank you for forcing me to talk about AI ethics, which is really something I probably should talk about more. That is it for this episode of the Backwards Hat CMO podcast. As always, I'm Dave DeBaugh, coming to you live and on tape from the Silicon Valley. That is Lisa Helfer. Once again, she is a global PR superstar. So make sure you have a chance to connect, maybe connect with her on LinkedIn. That is it for today's show. I wish everybody out there a tremendous rest of your business week.
You've been listening to the Backwards Hat CMO podcast with Dave Daba, presented by Stealth.ltd.